Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCGplayer affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of GEOFF. GEOFF has been supporting this channel now for over a year now as a general tier patron. I really couldn't do this without amazing patrons like GEOFF. And today, Jeff's going to handle the intro for me.
Hey Mitch, this is Jeff from Colorado. For my deck tech, I'd love to see you build around Kadena, focusing on Morph Tribal.
So like Jeff said, today's deck techs can be built around Kadena, Slinking Sorcerer with a morph theme. Kadena is a 3/3 Naga wizard that costs 1 black, green, blue. She has the first face-down creature spell you cast each turn costs 3 less to cast. And whenever a face-down creature enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. So with her in play, we can cast 1 free morph spell each turn. And on top of saving us mana, she also provides us card advantage too. Now there are only so many morphs out there, but there are some that are quite powerful. Also, keep in mind that she triggers off of any face-down creature, which includes manifest as well. So what's our strategy for this deck? Well, we're going to get out morphs to gain value and build up our board state. We can use that mana that we're saving from Kadena to morph our creatures when we need them. Morphs have a variety of effects, so they're always going to keep our opponents on their toes. And then how do we win with this deck? We're going to use our tricks and our army to wipe out our opponents. It can be hard for our opponents to justify blocking a morph creature when they don't know what's under it. We can use that and other combat tricks to our advantage. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start off with tactic number 1, start slinking. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay to and sacrifice to get a base land into play tapped. Next up, there's Secure Tribe Elder, which we can sacrifice to do the same. And then we've got some other great turn 2 ramp with Farseek, Rampant Growth, and Edge of Autumn. Farseek will get us an island or a swamp into play tapped, and Rampant Growth and Edge of Autumn will get us any base land into play tapped. Next up, we're running all 3 signets with Simic, Golgari, and Dimir. By paying 1 and tapping them, they add their guild's colors. And then we're running 2 of the talismans with Talisman of Curiosity and Talisman of Resilience. Both can either tap for a colorless or for 1 of 2 colors, but it deals 1 damage to us. You may have noticed that all these ramp spells ramp us on turn 2. Kadena costs 4 mana, so it's very important that we get her out quickly. She can save us a ton of mana in the long run by making morph spells free to cast. After the first morph spell is cast in a turn though, Obscuring Aether can help with the rest. It says face down creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And we can even pay 1 into green to turn it face down and it becomes a 2/2. Finally, we're running Wilderness Reclamation, which says at the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. This can help us utilize our mana on opponents' turns in other ways. We can use that mana for morph costs or in some circumstances, even to cast more morphs. Let's go through some ways to do that in tactic number 2. Flash Mob. First up, there's Vivien, Champion of the Wilds. She's a planeswalker that has you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. Now that effect is pretty valuable in most decks, but it's extremely valuable in this one. Again, keep in mind that Kadena says the first face down creature spell you cast each turn costs 3 less to cast. The key part of that being each turn instead of just on your turn. So with Vivien in play, you can essentially cast 1 free morph spell on each player's turn. So that's 4 creatures in play and a total of 12 mana saved each time around the table. And on top of that, you'll get to draw a card for each one of those creatures. Now that's an incredible amount of value, but the one downside to Vivien is that she is a planeswalker. Because of that, your opponents are probably going to swing through to try to kill her. But a similar card to this one is actually the golden pig of this deck. The golden pig is going to be the number 1 card out of our 99. And the golden pig for this deck is Vernal Equinox. It's an enchantment for 3 and a green, and it says any player may cast creature and enchantment spells as though they had flash. So unlike Vivien, this does affect everyone, and it also allows everyone to cast enchantment spells at flash speed too. The main difference though is that this is an enchantment, so it's much harder for opponents to deal with. A planeswalker is just a lot more easily taken out than an enchantment is. This may benefit your opponents, but it's going to benefit you the most by far. Again, unlike your opponents, this allows you to cast spells for free on their turns. This can provide you a huge advantage by getting more creatures out, saving a ton of mana, and drawing a lot of cards. And that's what makes it the golden pig. But what are some of those morphs that we're going to be casting? Let's go over some now in tactic number 3, bring friends. First up, there's Broodhatch Nantuko, which has, whenever it's dealt damage, you may create that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens. So this is a fantastic surprise blocker or surprise attacker that can get you a ton of tokens. Next up, there's Thelonite Hermit, which says all saplings get +1/+1. And when Thelonite Hermit is turn face up, create 4 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. So by flipping this up, you've got a total of 9 power on the board just from this. And then there's Hooded Hydra, which when you turn it face up, you get 5 +1/+1 counters on it. When it dies, you get to create a 1/1 green snake creature token for each +1/+1 counter on it. We've also got a way to generate morph creatures too though with Scroll of Fate. By tapping it we can manifest a card from our hand. Again, manifest means that you put that card onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature and turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. We've also got some ways to manifest on our end step with Primordial Mist and Whisperwood Elemental. Primordial Mist says at the beginning of your end step you may manifest the top card of your library. You can also exile a face down permanent you control face up and play that card this turn. And then on top of manifesting, Whisperwood Elemental is also a great piece of board wipe protection. By sacrificing it until the end of turn, face up non-token creatures you control gain when this creature dies, manifest the top card of your library. Next up there's Thieving Amalgam, which can generate a ton of value. It says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep you manifest the top card of that player's library. And then whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this can build an army on its own and can help us drain our opponents out. On top of that, it provides us a ton of card advantage with our commander in play. A way for us to draw a ton of cards at once comes from Ghastly Conscription. It says exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard in a face down pile, shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. With the right graveyard, this can put us way ahead of our opponents. But we've got plenty of other cards that can give us a lot of value in this deck too. Let's go over some of them now in tactic number 4, Value Time. First up there's Sagu Mauler, which is just a great value for a 6/6 with trample and hexproof. It only costs 3 green blue for us to morph this, and it can get even more powerful with some of the things that we have in this deck. A fantastic recurable morph creature though is Deathmist Raptor. It's a 3/3 with Death Touch, and it says whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, you may return Deathmist Raptor from your graveyard to the battlefield face up or face down. Because of that Death Touch, it can essentially be a repeatable removal spell, and it can also provide us card advantage if we keep bringing it back in face down. And finally, Soul Road Ambushers gives us a lot of extra value just for playing the game we want to play. It says whenever another permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. This permanently pumps our creatures and makes them into even bigger threats than they already were. Now our commander is great for card advantage, but we've got even more ways to help her out in this deck. So now let's move on to tactic number 5, Getting Ahead. First up there's Den Protector, which can help us recur 1 card when we turn her face up. On top of that, she can be a huge threat if we can pump her because creatures with power less than her can't block her. Another way to get some card advantage comes with Trail of Mystery. It says whenever a face down creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may search your library for a base land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. And then whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So now whenever we cast a morph spell or if we manifest a card, we get even more value. We can also get some value when they're turned face up with Unblinking Bleb and Secret Plans. Whenever Unblinking Bleb or another permanent is turned face up, you may scry 2. While this isn't card advantage, it is card selection. And then Secret Plans just straight up draws us a card whenever one of our permanents is turned face up. This is a very valuable card in this deck, especially since it gives our face down creatures +0/+1. Some other ways for us to draw some cards come from Beast Whisperer and Grim Haruspex. Beast Whisperer says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. And then Grim Haruspex is a morph creature that says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. But one way for us to draw a ton of cards at once comes from Shamanic Revelation. It says draw a card for each creature you control, and it's got Ferocious, you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So it can draw us a ton of cards and gain us a lot of life in the right circumstance. Finally there's Shared Summons, which lets us tutor for 2 creatures at instant speed. This card can get us some high value creatures or can get us our 2 combo creatures if we need them. But we'll touch on that combo later. For now, let's talk about how to protect our board that we're building up. So now let's move on to tactic number 6, Slippery as a Snake. First up there's Temur Sabertooth, which has pay 1 and a green. You may return another creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, Temur Sabertooth gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is a repeatable way to save our important creatures by bouncing them. Next up there's Misfire Weaver, and when it's turned face up, target creature we control gains hexproof until end of turn. But perhaps an even more impactful morph comes with Gift of Doom. You can morph it by sacrificing another creature, and as it's turned face up, you can attach it to a creature. It's going to give that enchanted creature Death Touch and indestructible. Most of the time we're going to save this for Kadena since she is very crucial for this deck. And finally we've got some ways to protect our entire board with Rapid Vigor and Golgari Charm. Rapid Vigor says regenerate each creature you control. And then Golgari Charm can do the same or can give all creatures -1/-1 until end of turn or destroy target enchantment. But outside of these, we've got other ways to protect our things too. So now let's move on to tactic number 7, Counterpoint. First up there's Kadena Silencer, which when it's turned face up, we counter all abilities our opponents control. Next up we've got 3 morphs that affect spells with Willbender, Stratus Dancer, and Void Mage Apprentice. When Willbender is turned face up, it can change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. And then Stratus Dancer can counter target instant or sorcery spell. Void Mage Apprentice takes it a step further by being able to counter any spell. Next up there's Karu's Spell Snatcher, which says when it's turned face up, counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. This can help us use one of our opponent's most powerful spells against them. But once they get something powerful on the board, how do we deal with it? Let's go through some ways now in tactic number 8, Snakebite. First up, there's Silumgar Assassin, which when it's turn face up, we destroy target creature with power 3 or less an opponent controls. Then when Skin Thunder's turn face up, we destroy target non-black creature, it can't be regenerated. Reality Shift can exile any creature and its controller manifest the top card of their library. If we're going to be losing one of our creatures anyways, we might just use this on one of our own. Next up, there's Temur War Shaman, which when it enters the battlefield, we manifest the top card of our library, and whenever a permanent we control is turn face up, if it's a creature, we can have it fight target creature we don't control. This can be a fantastic way for us to pick off our opponent's creatures one at a time. But we can also use Ice Feather Raven or Echo Tracer to bounce our opponent's creatures too, because when they're turn face up, they're going to bounce a creature back to its owner's hand. These both can be pretty flexible because we can actually use them to protect our creatures too. And then there's Chrome Shell Crab, which when it's turn face up, we can exchange control of target creature we control and target creature an opponent controls. This can give us a huge leg up by switching out one of our worst creatures for one of their best. Next up, we've got two morphs that can deal with enchantments or artifacts with Anok Survivalist and Nantuko Vigilante. And finally, there's Beast Within, which can deal with pretty much anything. It destroys target permanent in exchange for giving its controller a 3/3 green beast creature token. But we also have got some ways to deal with our opponent's things in a bigger way. So let's move on to tactic number 9, Snake Pit. First up, there's Thousand Winds, which when it's turn face up, we return all other tapped creatures to their owner's hands. This can be a very one-sided effect since we know it's going to be coming. And then there's Bane of the Living, which when it's turn face up, it makes all creatures get -X until end of turn. This can be a fantastic, flexible board wipe that we can use for the amount that we need. A very unique semi-board wipe comes with Ixodron. When it enters the battlefield, you turn all other non-token creatures face down. Since a lot of our creatures have morph, we'll still be able to turn those face up. But most likely our opponents won't have morph creatures, so they're going to be stuck with just 2/2s. But once we're set up, how do we actually finish off our opponents? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 10, it's Morphin time. First up, there's Veil of the Nightclad, which gives all of our creatures Intimidate. All of our face-down creatures are going to be unblockable since no creatures share colors with them. This can allow us to get through with some big hits. And also, whenever Vela or another creature we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So this can also be good board wipe insurance for us too. Next up, we've got some ways to pump our army with Return of the Wild Speaker, Biomass Mutation, and Overwhelming Stampede. Return of the Wild Speaker says choose 1, draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. So this can either draw some cards or pump our creatures at instant speed. Another way to pump our creatures at instant speed comes with Biomass Mutation, which makes our creatures have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. And although it's not instant, Overwhelming Stampede is very effective in this deck. It says until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So as long as we have one big creature on the board, it's going to make our entire army huge. The same effect can come with Dragon Throne of Tarkir. It says equip creature as defender and pay 2 and tap it. Other creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. So this might be a slower version of Overwhelming Stampede, but it is repeatable. And finally, if we need it, we can always use the Pickles lock. Brine Elemental and Vesuvian Shapeshifter together form the Pickles lock. Because when Brine Elemental is turned face up, each opponent skips their next untap step. And then as the Shapeshifter enters the battlefield or is turned face up, we can choose another creature on the battlefield. If you do, until Vesuvian Shapeshifter is turned face down, it becomes a copy of that creature, except it has at the beginning of your upkeep, you may turn that creature face down. So essentially we can keep turning Vesuvian Shapeshifter face up as a copy of Brine Elemental. When we do that, each opponent has to skip their next untap step. Essentially, we can just lock our opponents out of ever being able to untap again. Again, the deck can win in a variety of ways, and this is just one of them. Again, a big thanks to Jeff for supporting this channel for over a year now as a general tier patron. If you want to support this channel too, or want your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you, consider becoming a patron. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, there's Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, which we can both sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. Next up, we've got 3 lands which each come into play tapped and tap for either green or blue mana. And then there's 3 lands that enter the battlefield tapped and tap for either black or green mana. Next up, we've got 3 lands that enter the battlefield tapped and tap for either blue or black mana. And then there's Opulent Palace, which comes into play tapped and taps for any of our colors. We're also running all 3 Vivid lands that we can with Vivid Grove, Vivid Creek, and Vivid Marsh. And we're even running a Morph land with Zoetic Cavern. Finally, we're going to be running 20 basic lands, 10 of those will be a forest, 7 will be an island, and 3 will be a swamp. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Kadena EDH rec deck will set you back $148.95. The deck is going to be much cheaper, coming in at $49.47. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are about to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add an Alchemist Refuge by taking out an island. Next up, let's put in Leyline of Anticipation by taking out Sagu Mauler. And then let's put in Teferi Mage of Zhalfir by taking out Shamanic Revelation. Next up, we're adding in Panharmonicon by taking out Beast Whisperer. And then we're adding in Muruganda Petroglyphs by taking out Dragon Throne of Tarkir. Finally, let's add in Beastmaster Ascension and take out Biomass Mutation. And now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about this deck and what you think about the commander in general. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.